Warlocks, Shamans, DKs, and Mages receive major changes to abilities, talents, GCD removals, and everything looks so good because it's based on community feedback, your feedback. That plus PvP nerfs to Monks, Breath of the Dying, Conflict and Strife, and the versatile corruption makes this week's on Cooldown a must-watch.
Hello there, we are Marcelian&Online and we do class guides and WoW news on a weekly basis, and if you're into that, be sure to drop us a like and maybe throw a comment.
Yeah man, it really helps out massively. And now, on with the show!
Strap yourselves in, ladies and gents, because we will embark on the Devs Are Listening train to Hopetown. Big, and I mean big changes to Elemental and Enhancement Shamans right after our videos, and we like to have our work invalidated by good news. Searing Totem is going bye-bye. This change is to set the tone for how the specs are designed from here on out. Although Enhancement had some minor interactions with it, the Totem is essentially a dead ability, or was, since its damage is incredibly low and does not impact any of the Shaman specs in any way that would be worth it. Although seeing it go away is a bit shitty, better than having an unpruned ability for the sake of unpruning. Elemental has had Fulmination and Seismic Thunder changed to be procced only from Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning respectively, with no crossover. This change is good since it draws a line between what is single target and what is AoE. With that in mind, Earthquake's damage was reduced, but Seismic Thunder buffed to give it more damage instead. Fire Elemental has become a beast of a cooldown that affects Flame Shock, increasing its DPS, and newly applied Flame Shocks will have 100% extra duration. Also, Lava Surge proc will be increased. But maybe one of the best changes that I hope to see on things like Searing Totem is the Lightning Shield, to give fulmination stacks upon being hit. Previously, this skill was useless and only there for the aesthetics. Enhancement has received beefier changes. Rockbiter has been removed. Wow. The change is a test and not final. The devs have specified clearly that they want to see how it feels, since in the current enhancement version, or the past enhancement version, Rockbiter was only a filler, cause no more Maelstrom and all. Hence, talents affecting it have been addressed as well. Boulder Fist has been replaced with Lashing Flames, making Lava Lash increase the damage of your Flame Shock on the target by 100% for 12 seconds. Landslide also has been renamed to Storm Fury and will make Wind Fury procs reduce the cooldown of Storm Strike. Wow, this is actually cool as a design. We still need to test it and see how it actually feels. Maelstrom Weapon has two new effects. Now it will increase the damage and healing of the spells it affects and can stack up to 10 times. With this change in place, the base damage and healing of said spells have been reduced. Although we don't know the numbers yet, the change will make it worth casting said spells only with Maelstrom Weapon, which is both good or bad. Well, good because it makes your rotation make more sense, bad because it reduces the versatility to your kit and the help that you can offer to your group, where now you have to keep DPSing to heal your group properly as opposed to just healing when it's necessary, which can also be a good thing in the end since it raises the skill cap of the spec. Yay! Wind Fury Totem radius has been increased from 12 to 30 yards. I mean, nobody should be surprised at this change, really. Lightning Shield also grants a Maelstrom Weapon charge, but only with a 50% chance upon being hit, to compensate for the fact that you are in melee and likely to get meleeed way more often than Elemental. The coolest change on top of all of this is the Searing Assault talent, redesigned to make Frost Shock get a 50% extra damage when Maelstrom Weapon stacks are consumed for each stack, and your Flame Shock be applied to an extra target per stacks consumed as well, with a few more changes that you can check in the article down below, fully disclosed. Enhancement and Elemental seem to be a lot more clear-cut in what they want to do, and honestly, very appealing from their designs. All of these changes have just been recently added to the alpha for us to test, but once they are more accessible to everybody, the Earthshrine community is bound to put out some proper info on the matter. All we need is for Resto Shaman to not be replaceable by any other healer specs, and we Gucci.
If you are the masochistic type warlock that likes to spend 6 seconds to cast your pet, then you will be sad to hear Fel Domination is becoming a baseline ability. This will reduce the cast time of your next pet by 5.5 seconds with a 3-minute cooldown. I mean, the pet casting change was argued to be in place because of PvP pet swapping to gain the utility of different pets or to harass faraway healers and resummon it instantly with almost no downside. Outside the latter, you'd think pet swapping is a skill-based action that requires game knowledge and understanding. I suppose Fel Domination helps with this, but that means you still have 6 seconds cast time for your pet summons. It's better, but still a pain to recast your pet in dungeons when it stupidly dies, or wall questing when it gets chunked by an elite. Not sure if these will be taken into consideration. Doom will be only a demonology spell and replaced by Curse of Exhaustion for all 3 specs, while Shadow Embrace has been baked into Shadow Bolt for Affliction. Finally, Shadow Bolt has been the useless wet noodle filler for too long, and this change should have happened sooner. An experimental change with Unstable Affliction sees the limit of 1 being removed, but also no longer increases the damage the target is taking, which is a major drawback. The Dispel Backlash has been increased, quote, substantially, end quote. Again, not final. To replace Deadbolt, you have Inevitable Demise, the Azerite trait. You know, the one that increases the damage of your next drain life by 5% each time Agony damages an enemy with 50 max stacks. This increases the base damage by up to 250%, that is automatically translated into an increase in healing as well. This was always a fun trait to use, and as long as the damage is balanced so it becomes playable, you would eagerly await the day you can heal from 0 to 100 with 1 drain life. Yes, very well indeed. And speaking of Azerite traits, Wrath in Agony will start the Agony stacks at 4 while keeping the max 18. This is again a very welcome change, not only damage-wise but quality of life. It sucks to go from one expansion and lose core traits and passives that influenced your builds and rotations, so having them baked into talents is something players have been asking for a while now. Tongue-Tied will be replaced by none other than Howl of Terror. Talk about unpruning! This is an oldie at this point and glad to have it back. Damage numbers aside, Affliction has been suffering greatly when put against Demo and Destro, and having more utility will increase its appeal in both PvE and PvP. Deadbolt will be a PvP talent that deals 60% of the remaining dot damage with a small cast time to act as a proper finisher. Also, projectile speed being decreased is a bit of a concern when you need to factor in the dot duration. Depending on when it actually snapshots the damage on impact or cast, it can be either good or bad. All of these changes are not final, and it's very nice and welcoming to see the devs react this open-minded to the feedback players have given, and you can only hope all specs will be treated this way. Shadow Priest, please!
And in this week's comment of the day, we have Nemo Druid, and he said,
Nice! I literally can't wait for Shadowlands anymore. I'm like Carmen, waiting for the Nintendo Wii.
Come on! Come on!
There you are, Marcelian. What are you doing?
Waiting for Shadowlands to come out, Mom!
Then when is that?
In about 6 months!
So
Come on!
You're as optimistic as me about getting laid. The fight against the GCD system continues, and Blood Decay is rising from the ashes with one of the best changes it could have gotten. Rune Tap was taken off the GCD. This change is actually very major. Baseline Rune Tap is only really needed if it can prevent a hit that would kill you in one global. Since the way Blood Knights are designed, they can heal pretty much anything that doesn't kill them. The fact that Rune Tap reduces the damage you take means it also reduces the healing you do to yourself. Death Strike heals back 25% of the damage you took in the last 5 seconds, and if Rune Tap reduces the damage you take for 4 seconds, it essentially creates a 4 seconds window of reduced death strike efficiency, meaning that the next good death strike would be at least 9 seconds after pressing rune tap. Kinda. This is to paint a clear picture about how death strike works, and spending a global and a rune for it is not worth it, for rune tap that is, unless it does something which death strike cannot, and that is to save your butt. Now that it has been taken off the GCD, the cost for it is only the rune, aka 5 to 15 runic power you would get from using a hard strike instead, making it an actually worth to press button, and not only to save you from a hit that should kill you. Although it fundamentally still works against the mechanics of Death Strike, the cost of it is not as large as to make you have to think twice about using it for regular high damage intake. This is a very clear example of how important the GCD system is and how much of an impact an ability can make by either being on the GCD or not being there. On top of this, Unholy has had Outbreak duration buffed to 28 seconds and has had its AoE range increased to 10 yards from 8. These changes are in place to mitigate the current version of Outbreak after its change from the live counterpart, which had a continuous reapplying mechanic for a few seconds that made it easier to spread and also passively increased its duration. The mechanic of Virulent Plague would sometimes burst for AoE damage, and this is still not in the alpha, and this can be argued when we see the actual damage numbers, since the bursting effect is also debatable in its value. It deals damage, sure, but it also builds aggro as well, considering you ideally use Outbreak as the tank is pulling and setting up the boss or packs. And not only this, Mage has received a couple of very important changes as well. Shimmer has had both of its charge back, so now Shimmer has 2 charges because it really didn't work well with just 1 charge. The people have complained and Blizzard have listened. Not only that, Alexstrasza's Fury now also increases the damage of Pyroblast and Flame Strike, a much needed change to make that entire talent robe more appealing. And last but not least, Arcane Mastery has been buffed to also increase all arcane damage dealt. Could this mean we will see more arcane mages in the future? Not sure yet, but this is going in the right direction, and Blizzard is doing all of these changes because you guys are feedbacking all of this. Thank you.
With all this Shadowlands goodness, it's pretty hard to see that while the AWC is in full swing, PvP nerfs are coming left and right. First off, we had the Chrysalis PvP talent for Mistweaver Monks, which initially reduced the cocoon by 45 seconds, and now, after the nerfs, it reduces it by 25 seconds, making it currently on a 1.3 minute cooldown in PvP. You have to remember there is also the Burst of Life Azerite trait that reduces life cocoon by another 20 seconds, and the truth is, prior to this, you had a cocoon on a total of 55 seconds cooldown, which was a bit ridiculous and transformed Mistweaver Monks into the #1 meta healer for arenas. Monks, as many other classes in the game, can easily die in a full stun when caught off guard, and this leads you to the second round of nerfs, to versatility stuff. Conflict and Strife got nerfed to increase the defensive benefit of your versatility by 50% down from 100% while stunned. This paired up with the nerf to the Versatile Corruption, having its effectiveness reduced by 33% in PvP, will seriously hurt all these classes that cannot make use of any defensive while stunned, Monks included. On one hand, you have to admit that prior to the nerfs for Conflict and Versatile, specs that were already a bit more tanky would stack versatility like crazy. Demon Hunters and Destrolocks alike, and we all know how hard it can be to kill any of these in arenas if they know what they're doing. There was definitely work to be done on addressing the crazy amount of versatility some folks would stack, not to mention the direct effect those numbers had on essences like Crucible of Flame or Breath of the Dying, increasing their damage considerably. On the topic of breath, if you ever played arenas at a decent level, you probably noticed that Reaping Flames would show up as one of the top abilities, if not the top, especially if you had any kind of pets or totems in your group. Now, Reaping Flames has its CD reduced by 5 seconds and 100% increased damage after killing an enemy. And this was used a lot on Hunter, DK, and Warlock pets, totems, Scythe Fiends, Shadow Fiends. Hell, I used it even on things from beyond in some cases. And that will result in multiple hits for absurd amounts of damage. Well, it got nerfed, as Reaping Flames can no longer activate on player-controlled targets, like pets, totems, guardians, whatever. Listen, it's been a whole lot of time since Blizz started to address stuff in arenas, and the fact that AWC started and these started rolling in is just pure coincidence, right? The only way to draw conclusions out of this is to test them out, while also seeing what the big boys are dealing with in AWC. But it's good that they at least started to address this shit once again, because for the longest time, arena PvP seemed an abandoned, barren land in terms of hotfixes and shit. So I'm happy. Right, this is some amazing stuff that's happening, man. I think this is like the most committed I've ever seen the devs being for feedback from the community.
Yeah,
well, I mean, it's I don't believe. It's unreal.
It's very reassuring to think that the expansion still has, well, at least until November, December, until it's released, and we have a lot of specs that still need a lot of attention, like Shadow Priest, Feral Druid, stuff like that.
Oh, if you think about it, if they take the same level of commitment and dedication and, you know, grabbing in all the feedback and apply that to Shadow Priest, I mean, there's hope. At least that. There's hope.
Can
right?
Shadow Priest enter an expansion without being fucked up?
Man, we definitely hope so. There's also, as it always happens, once we finish the research and the script and everything for the on cooldown, a new build comes out. And obviously, we have the Maldraxxus zone to explore, a lot of new customization options for Torrents. You have the Druid forms you can be able to choose now from the Barbers.
Maldraxxus is the one that I initially wanted to test out, but I was so blown away by all the other zones. I actually don't know if Maldraxxus can still keep it together for me, but I'm actually really excited.
It's on the topic of Maldraxxus now. So the other zones we looked at, they're like all super nicely designed and shit, and more or less you kind of see sort of the same things when it comes to enemies and stuff. I mean, it has this similarity, right? Well, my friend, Maldraxxus has some of the most amazing models for enemies I've ever seen in the game. They're ridiculous, like all those demon type dudes and the blobby stuff with skeletons inside. It's something really fresh and new, and this is the thing, right? Like, the zone is bright edgy, it's, you know, greeny, all of that necrolordish stuff, but the enemies, dude, enemies are like what make the zone.
I really want to test it out now, because if Necrotic Wake is anything to judge things by, there's some cool as that. I mean, people had fun thinking of how do we put skeletons and blobs and gooey shit all together to make enemies, and they just like threw shit in and just cooked some stuff up.
But I think the most important stuff was already covered here, like the big ass changes to the classes.
So many changes.
Yes, desperately needed, and man, I really hope by next week we can talk about major changes to Shadow Priest. What other specs are really fucked up?
Feral Druid, man, they forgot about
Feral Druid,
but there's a lot more specs, and we are able to do all of this because you guys are supporting our channel, dear patrons. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
If you're interested in checking what our Patreon is about, the link is down in the description. And of course, we have to show our love to our Twitch subscribers and everybody that's active there. You guys are actually contributing a lot to making all of this possible. We're super grateful for it.
Thank you very much for all of the support. Once again, we cannot overstate this enough. None of it is mandatory. We do this out of pure love. But we have to admit, it helps a great deal when we have people like you guys supporting on Patreon or Twitch or whatever. So with that, we wish you the best weekend you could ever have. And
take care, everybody. See you next one.
I do shit with my fingers. I don't know.
That worked for some people.
You